My name's Jeff Bajorek, and my career in sales has been a hell of a ride. And I want to bring you along with me. If you prefer to sell things at a premium, if you never want to win a deal on price, rethink the way you sell. Welcome back to the show. My name's Jeff Bajorek. I'm your host, and I'm here to help you rethink the way you sell. Now, if you remember earlier this season, I told you where Sell Like You came from. It hit me kind of out of nowhere while I was at Outbound in 2021. And I bought the domain right away. I used the hashtag in a couple of posts. I kind of knew that there was some place to go with this, but didn't know exactly where. And really my understanding of it and what it could be was pretty limited. So I set it aside for a while. And then during the summer and early fall of 2022, I picked it back up again. I had more ideas around it. I knew what to do with it. And I just started to look. I said, I wonder who else has come up with this. I wonder if this is still a unique idea. And as I searched the podcast realm for this hashtag, essentially, I came across the Sell Like You podcast and a woman named Harriet Mellor. And immediately I said, well, this is someone that I need to connect with because we've got kind of the same ideas along the same lines. And she's not doing exactly what I do, but something very close, certainly close enough to make the connection. And she wonderfully decided to sit down with me for a conversation for this show. And I can tell you, she is amazing at what she does. You will see in this interview the unique approach that she brings to what she does, the unique backstory that she has, and really what impresses me the most about her, and I hope you pick this up, is just this idea, or not really an idea, but the way she carries herself throughout the whole conversation. And really, I get the impression the way she's carried herself throughout her entire career, there's just this almost effortless, I'm sure there's more effort to it than she makes it look, but she's just got this self-assured nature to her. And it calls about this feeling of total security and ownership in who she is, what she does, and how she does it. So I hope that rubs off a little bit on you as you listen to this discussion. We cover a lot of things. I'm not going to give the whole episode away. Enjoy this conversation, and I will see you on the other side of it. Harriet, it is so good to be with you, to connect with you. It's funny, I was really researching this Sell Like You concept. And I came up with this, a year and a half ago as we're recording this, but I never really did anything with it. And then I was just kind of searching out there. I'm like, I wonder if anybody else is, kind of in tune on this idea. And of course, there's your podcast, the Sell Like You podcast. I said, well, if I'm going to approach this subject material, I have to connect with this woman. And I'm delighted to be with you today. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you for inviting. Thanks for jumping into my DMs on LinkedIn.
I'm not known for sliding into people's DMs, but when I knew I had to connect with you, and I read the description of the podcast. I read, I listened to a couple episodes. I looked into what you're doing, and I said, this lady gets it. I need to talk to her. So it's kind of fun. And I was talking to my wife about this, and she said, Jeff, it's like big magic. I'm like, what do you mean? And there's a book, a best-selling book by Elizabeth Gilbert that talks about how she had this idea for a book and she put it away. And at the same time, another woman halfway across the world from her wrote the book that she had in her mind, like the same character names. I may be getting some of the details wrong, but it was like spooky. Like this was way beyond coincidence. And this whole concept is that when there's an idea, when the universe presents you with an idea, you either listen to it and you take action on it, or the universe takes it away from you and gives it to somebody else.
Gives it to somebody else.
And it's one of those things where if you've ever needed validation that what you're supposed to be doing, or that something is there for you to do and you need to do it. You hear these stories, and I'm glad to connect with you, and I'm glad to hear your take on this whole thing. So I want to start by asking what's your sales origin story? How did you decide to get into sales, or were you coerced like most of us seem to have been?
Most of us this way. Come on, it's the dark side. It's definitely coercion. I will have to say that. But I always remember sitting in, as I got into sales. And I will come back to how I got into sales. But as I was in sales, in every sales training, it was put your hand up if you said, when I grow up, I want to be in IT sales, and
Right.
we would all chuckle, and then we'd move on with the sales training. But that was funny for me because back then, when I was just starting out in my career, I was an events planner. That was what I wanted to be. It was what I dreamt of being. It was glamorous, and I could go to all these different locations and see the world. And it wasn't quite like that. But I certainly got into the industry and eventually found it quite boring. It was the same events, same style, etc., so on and so forth. And I got into a job interview for an IT hosting company, and they took me on as their internal events. It was very Google-esque. It was cool events, and we had unlimited money, and we could do some really fun things. And the CEO of the company said to me repeatedly, probably daily, "You need to be in sales." And I was like, I'm absolutely not going into sales. There's no way. No, through hell or high water, I'm not going into sales. Like, I will do anything but sell. But what I realized was that actually I've been selling my whole life, and he saw something in me that I just hadn't quite connected. And it came up as with an opportunity where the business was growing. We were like 150, 200 people, and they were growing to 600 people. And he said, "You're my person. I need you to come in and support the team, and I need you to train the sales team." Great. I don't sell. I don't know how I'm selling. He said, "You know what you're doing."
You were asked to train a sales team where you had not even held a sales role. You said you realized that you had been selling this whole time. I'm writing this down because I want to come back to it. I don't want to interrupt your story. And then I went and interrupted your story when you told me that you were responsible for training salespeople, but you'd never had a sales role. Okay. I'll let you come back to that then in a minute too. Go ahead.
Yes. Yeah. Well, so he came through and said, we need this doing, you're the person for the job. And at the time, I've been doing a lot of projects within the business. And so he'd seen me kind of go in, execute wins, come out, negotiate with people, all of the sales skills that we could dream of, I had. And I've been supported and taught and mentored through them. And so when this opportunity came, it was really positioned as onboarding. So I was like, yeah, I'll onboard. And then it was like, okay, now they need to cold call. I was like, okay, let me research. So as the process went on, I came into this role. And for me, the point of coming into that was like, okay, I'm going to give it a go. What's the worst that can happen? If I don't like it, can I go back? And he said, yes, you absolutely can. So, and that was really the start of my official sales journey. But now when I look back, there's so many roles. I started out when I was 13 or 14 working in retail, and then I worked my way up through different jobs and different positions. And that was forever selling. But just the label for me, I just never was.
So that's interesting because a lot of us feel that way. And someone recommended that I get into sales, and I turn around and wondered if they were talking to someone behind me, right? Like, wait a second. We've worked together for how long? You don't know me by now. You're suggesting that I do this. And I think one of two things happens in that situation. You either have no idea what selling really is, or you decide to define selling as something different than you had originally defined it. Which of those was, maybe those are the same thing to some people, but I mean, like, what was it like for you? And you mentioned, I realized I'd always been selling, and now I'm just kind of backdooring my way into sales training for this company. When did that switch flip for you?
I would say that the switch for me came probably just before I got asked that question about joining the sales team and supporting this growth and the onboarding. Was that I was working with the marketing team, and we were looking at testimonials, and we had these incredible businesses, massive companies that I knew of, that I bought from, and they were having challenges. At the time, it was all to do with where you were located and where the hosting, where your hosting provider was located, made a massive difference. And now that's not the case, but back then it was. And so the problem was that these companies were having challenges in getting their clients to their website. Without clients to their website, they can't make sales. Without sales, they can't grow their business. And so what I was able to see then was the fact that by working with us, by using us to provide a solution to their problem, we were able to overcome their challenge and support them in growth. So they were seeing exponential growth really early on from switching just to hosting providers from somebody in the US to somebody in the UK. And for me, that was the connector of, hang on a minute, we can really make a difference and an impact to a business, and whether it's your business or your life, to a business that I could see. It was there in black and white for me. And at that point I was like, why are we not telling more people that this is the opportunity that is right at their fingertips, and we've got it for everybody in the UK? And so at that point, it wasn't, how can I sell more of these? It was like, how do I tell more people that this is a possibility, that this problem can be solved, and I can help you do it.
And you were just the person problem. You decided that you could take that on. There was something that excited you about solving those kinds of problems. Yeah.
I was like, get out of my way. Let me get to that phone. Who can I ring?
I talk a lot about the passion that comes from alignment with what you sell, who you sell it to, how you sell it, and then why. That why is so important. And, the components of that alignment, really the missing piece, the piece that we all have to figure out ourselves, is the how, right? Like the and everybody's got their own playbook, and you really need to, you don't need to start from scratch and build from absolutely the ground up. The templates are out there, but you have to kind of create or modify the template to the point where it really fits the way you feel best. But the alignment part is the key. And that why, I think it sounds like that was the trigger. Oh my goodness, we can make such an impact here. People have so much in front of them that they don't even realize. And that's, I tell people, once I redefined selling for myself, once my perspective opened up, the entire world opened up. My life has a much richer experience now because I got into sales, and not just because I have, it's a commission job and I can give myself a raise anytime I want, and the money's pretty good, and all this stuff. I see selling as a way that we all relate to each other as humans relating to other humans. And as soon as I made that switch, it was like mind-blowing and eye-opening. And that was my why. I said, I have to do this for other people in some way. I didn't think I'd ever open a business. I thought I'd teach a college course or something and just help people do more good. But it's really incredible when you see that problem that can be solved and you realize that you have the skills to solve it. It is like a light switch flips on and you're ready to go. Yeah. Like it's a fire in your belly for sure. Was that your experience too? Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Find now, like I guess really what I understood about me and about the way that I approach life is that I was a connector. I was the natural thing in me was I was a connector from a very young age. And my mum, talks to me about it and how I just went after what I wanted and how I would always make sure there was a friend with another friend in the playground. And that was how I've always been brought up, and that's my personality. And so the helping bit is very natural to me. So if I could solve, if I can connect you with somebody else to solve a problem, I'm going to do it, whether I know you or not. If I hear that there is a certain problem, if I hear somebody in the shops talking about something and I'm like, I know where you can find that thing, I know somebody that can solve that problem for you, I'll say, I'm really sorry, I just overheard what you said. Here's somebody's card. Or do you mind if I share somebody that I would recommend? I'm that weirdo in the shops.
Wow. But that's, it's funny, you jokingly say you're that weirdo. Is it weird to help people? Is it weird to feel so passionate about something? It's not common, but is it weird? And I think, and it's not just semantics here. I'm not just reframing things so I can feel good about what I'm saying or the way I'm saying it. It's you can help somebody. And when you believe very passionately that you can help somebody, you mean all that's getting in the way is me picking up this phone? The only thing that's getting in the way is the fact that I haven't reached out to them in some way. It's like, I don't know, you were really loud in the store and I just was walking by looking at something else. And I heard that you said, I happen to know someone who can help. There's nothing in it for me other than to potentially help you. If you'd like, I can pass you this number. I do that too sometimes, not so often with, complete strangers. And
But sometimes, sometimes when I'm out, just to be by myself, and I just kind of, I'm always paying attention, but I'm not necessarily interested in contributing. But I think it's funny because there's a lot of talk about discipline, and there's a lot of talk about you got to get up early and you got to have your morning routine so that everything is consistent, so that you can get into a state of workflow and you can do this and you can do this. And it's like, discipline's not that hard when you're really passionate about what you do. It's not hard to work 60 hours a week when you just like, what else would you want to do? I've had these discussions before with my wife. She's like, you're working all the time. And I'm like, yeah, if you give me something better to do, I'll do it. It's not because I'm a slave to this position. It's not like I feel like I'm behind all the time. It's like, I really want to do more of this. So like, if you and the kids are just watching TV or whatever, I'm just going to be over here. I'm going to be writing something. I'm going to be researching something. I'm going to be reading something. Like, this is who we are. It's what we do. When did you, I think, like, what does it mean to sell like you? And when did you kind of break out of the mold of what everybody else was doing? And I'm asking this question because I ask everybody, during this season. So I want to get to this topic, but it also sounds like you arrived at sales a lot more intuitively than most people do. Unpack that a little bit. Tell me a little bit more about your journey and when you realized you were in sales to when you took kind of a formal role. And was there another was there another transition for you, or are you just one of those weird people that intuitively knew how to do this and just killed it?
Good question. I was definitely not, wouldn't say I killed it from the beginning. But I think because I had the ability to stop and learn and listen and really understand what sales is in my own terms, but understand who, the people that were doing it. The first book I was given by the CEO of the company was The Ultimate Sales Machine by Chet Holmes.
Oh,
and book.
Oh,
what a book. So if you haven't read that, if they're listening, read the book. We had hundreds of them. So I read it and I said, right, every single salesperson has to. So as part of onboarding, they would read the book and we would share our biggest takeaway from the book. So I was forever learning from the people that I was training. And so I think for me, the selling like me came from understanding what I was trying to achieve and doing it in my own way. So I didn't have scripts at that point. I didn't really have templates. And I then eventually had to create them when I became, more involved in the sales training process of more in-depth and more opportunity driven as to what was working. But I used to look at what didn't work so that we could see what potentially could work. And, leveraging, understanding the language and the objections. And a lot of that, I would say, probably did come in intuitively, but the learnings came from all the incredible people that have gone before us, in a sales role. And even, like Wolf of Wall Street, what a great film. Not necessarily, the best role model at that point, but incredible at what he achieved, and incredible now what he does. But if you look at the story, like they were hungry, like that was what got them there. The belief that they could make money more than make a difference. The belief that they could do it every single day was something that they got up and they never questioned it. And so the mindset piece and all of that. So I think that's my starter journey. And when I moved to Australia in 2014, I came and I had no idea what I was going to do. I was like, I've been in IT sales. It's good. Do I still want to do it? I don't know. I don't have to work for a few months, so I'm just going to enjoy the summer and see what happens. And I ended up on a boat, as you do in Australia, and with a friend of a friend who owned an IT company. And he said, here knows what the Elastic Cloud is, and we would like to hire you. And so that was my job interview over a beer on a boat. And I ran his company for a year and then got poached and headhunted and taken somewhere else. So that's kind of, that's the journey often of a salesperson. The biggest transformation for me at that point was that I came towards the end of my of my corporate career, I call it, 3 years ago now. And before I left that job, I spent 6 months working with a coach in LA. And that was, at the time, probably I thought I was going to get business coaching and I'd get a bit more clarity on what I should be, business coaching and career coaching, as to what I should be doing next. Because I'd hit not really a ceiling, there's no ceiling really in sales, but I'd hit a point where I was like, I can keep going, and I've done extremely well, and like, as you said before, making good money, and I'm supporting really cool clients, and I'm making a difference, and people know my name in Australia when it comes to IT sales. So what else do I want from this? And I get often asked a lot about what did I learn in those 6 months about business and about, growth. And I was like, the biggest thing I learned was mindset. And that comes all the way back to my first beginning of my journey in official sales, of knowing that I could make a difference. And so therefore for me, that 6 months journey was just mindset of what is possible. Let's have some fun with what's possible. What can I bring to somebody with all of the skills and all of the experience and knowledge that I've got? And am I passionate about it? And that was where Your Sales Co was born. And that's then now my official journey into sales, I would say.
So what does it mean to sell like you? Well, in short, it means more pipeline. It means bigger deals that close faster and more often. It means more customer loyalty, so there's less churn. And it means a culture on your team where winning is expected and everyone's having fun. Now, if this sounds like something your team needs, go to jeffbajorek.com/services and find out how I use this approach to help teams like yours create world-class results. Now, back to the show.
I've never heard anybody say what you just said about what they took away from the Wolf of Wall Street movie. That is impressive, because I felt like that film was, it was fun. It was really fun to watch. It was a good movie. The actors were brilliant. It's a compelling story. But to me, it almost felt like, and the word is escaping me right now, but like, look at this spectacle, right? This was an example of how not to be. And in a lot of ways, I think it made Jordan Belfort relevant again, and helped him launch his podcast and all this his sales school and all this stuff. And it's like, are there really people who idolize that kind of? There still are, but in a lot of ways, I think that represents all the things that we don't want to be like in sales, which is really interesting. But what you're saying you took away from it was the passion, the enthusiasm, that, hey, look, just because, and we don't need to demonize money in any way, but just because their goal was, or their passion was about making as much money and having as great of a time as possible, it doesn't mean that it isn't a valid passion. And so when you take it, like, here are people following their passion, and what am I that passionate about versus what is this spectacle of just a dumpster fire of a situation, going to prison and things like that. That's really, really interesting. But it also sounds like you've always just kind of intuitively followed where your soul in a lot of ways has told you where to go. Like that's, I don't know if I've ever talked to somebody who did that. Specifically in that regard. So you are one of those weird people. I
told you I was weird.
Yeah, that's okay. In the best possible way. We're all weird. We are. But that's interesting, because I think that, and maybe it's 1% of the top performers that are just intuitively just free enough to not have that resistance. I've been listening to a lot of Stephen Pressfield recently, and he talks about resistance with a capital R, this lethal force that tries to talk you out of whatever it is you feel is the right thing to do. And you have to overcome this. You have to work through this. You have to recognize it for what it is. And I don't think there are very many people who don't have it, or maybe there's just manifested itself kind of way. But I think every top performer makes a decision to work through that resistance at some point. And maybe you're not just one of those people. Maybe it just faced you in a different way. Like the confidence, the clarity to say, no, this feels like the right thing to do. I'm going to do it. Were you taught that, or is that again just something intuitive any other way?
I think we're going further back now, but I think with education, I hated school. Like,
Okay.
did not enjoy it at all. It was not my place. It was too restrictive. There was, there were so many rules and people just telling me what to. And I found that when I left, because in the UK you go to school till you're 16 and then you can go to sixth form or you can go to college.
Okay.
And then it's university. So I went to college, and college was a lot more freeing. You could choose the subjects you wanted to learn and you had deadlines, but if you didn't show up to class, nobody cared.
Right.
As long as you got your work in on time. And that for me was that was where I thrived. At that point, I realized I didn't want to learn and just read textbooks and write about it. I wanted to go and do something about it. And that was what I said to my parents. And at that time, there was, my brother was a year and a half, 2 years younger than me. And he's extremely academic. He's a car designer, had to go and do, all the physics and the design and the art, went to university for 4 years, incredible at what he does. That wasn't me. I wasn't an A-star student. And so I felt like I always had something to prove growing up, not going to university, going to work in a restaurant, being a nanny, working in retail, like all of the, the jobs that I did to fund my brand new car and all my shoes and all the things.
Sure.
Found my way into what it was that I wanted to do. And I think for me, I've always gone, well, this feels fun. Shall we give it a go? And there are times where I failed, and there are times where I've gone, oh, I don't know if this is for me, or really second guessing what it is that I'm doing. But the question I always come back to, and again, I've learned these techniques over the what's the worst that could happen? I fail and that one person laughs at me, or I learn and I'm successful and people celebrate what it was that I created. There's so many ways of doing it. And that doesn't mean I'm not scared. It doesn't mean I'm not challenged every single day. But if I'm coming up against something that I don't want to do, I'm like, why? Is it because it's not the right thing for me to be doing? Or is it because I'm scared? And if I'm scared, then let's do it.
You touched on something there. And I talk about having to rethink and re-examine your dysfunctional relationship with failure. What does failure mean to you?
Oh, what do you mean? That's a real. I think for me, because I always talk about, you either win or you learn. You never lose.
Yeah.
Yes, I feel like then with failure is. If you asked me if I ever failed at anything, I'd probably just say my English GCSE. But so I think for me, I think failure is just not hitting a mark that I thought I needed to hit, maybe. But for me, again, if we look at the failure point in sales in my business, because again, I deal with clients one-on-one. I have online programs, I have online courses. I never go into something saying I have to get 15 people on this course, or I have to sell $250,000 of this course for it to be a success. I just have to sell it to one person. Yeah. And if I sell it to one person, it's a success. So maybe I don't pitch any failures. I don't look at failure as an option, because if somebody doesn't buy my thing, it's not because I failed. It's because I either didn't articulate it properly or they don't know that they need it yet.
Yeah, it's really, I think people have way too low of a bar for what failure is. I think you make a sales call and someone doesn't pick up, or you make a sales call and, someone doesn't want to buy from you or whatever. It's like, okay, did you learn something? Because if you learned something on this sales call that is going to help you make the next sales call, whether it's to this prospect or another one, it's a win. It's a step forward. No step is too small so long as it's headed in the right direction and you keep taking steps. And when you redefine it that way, I'm either winning or I'm learning, right? It's like, okay, how often do you not learn something? Right. And, I guess every once in a while, you're going to call 50 people in a day and no one's going to answer. At the very least, you learn that it's not the right day to make those calls, right? I mean, you don't want to be reductive about failure, but I remember one time I was selling in northeastern Michigan, and I didn't realize I was selling to physicians. I went from doctor's office to doctor's office to doctor's office in this town, and everybody was closed. I'm like, what? It's a Tuesday. Why is everybody closed? Like, the sun was out, like whatever. It was the official opening day of deer hunting season. And I don't hunt. And I forgot what day it was. And I was like, oh yeah, don't sell up. No, like the schools were closed. It's like a holiday for a lot of people. And I knew this, I just didn't recognize what day it was. So even in that time, it was like, oh yeah, remember, what time of year it is and what people, if you're making cold calls door to door in a town, you should, just kind of check the temperature of what's going on. So there's just so many ways to continue to learn. And I think like the mindset around a sales career is so important because it keeps your momentum going. In a way, it's almost like, redefining what success and failure are, help you keep your momentum going so that you're not derailed at the drop of a hat. I mean, and that's so easy to do, that the ups and downs are so severe sometimes. And, I had a manager, my first manager, Jeff, you can't get too high with the highs. You can't get too low with the lows. And I said, well, that sounds great. I didn't really know what he meant until much later, but these constant, like when you can redefine your journey as just constantly stepping forward, constantly moving forward, that helps you not get too carried away in either direction. That's powerful.
And a tip really for that I find has worked for me over the years, and it's something that I recommend because I talk about lots of things in threes. I don't know if you look at the power of three. But looking at what's the one thing you can do today to move your business forward, or move an opportunity forward, or move something that you're selling forward. Like, how can you get that into somebody else's eyes, ears, inbox, whatever that looks like? What's the one thing, two, three things you can do to move yourself or your business forward, or your sales opportunities? Because that's what as you just said there, we want to keep moving forward. And somebody said something to me about that if you're trying, or if you're seeing momentum, you always had momentum unless you're going backwards. And I was like, that's such an interesting thing to say, because I was talking about an avenue within my business that I'm really, the momentum's really there now, and it's down to consistency and all the things that I've been working on. And he said, well, you always had momentum. He said, you're just accelerating that. And I was like, oh, that's an interesting point. Because again, I think coming back to that failure piece and lifting, surround yourself with, who's lifting you up, who's telling you that you're winning. Because if I said to one of my friends, one of my mentors, somebody that surrounds me that I really cherish their opinion or their support, and I say, oh, I didn't get that deal, or I didn't achieve this, or I was hoping to hit this mark and I didn't, they would say, well, what did you win, and what did you get, or where did you get, and how do you feel about that? And therefore, looking at who you surround yourself with will show you whether you failed or whether you won, because it's all about how you look at it and what other people around you are telling you is a failure versus a win, or versus a learn.
Who's reminding you that you're winning? That is such a great way. That is such a great way to put it. I've always found a way. This has come intuitively to me. I've always found a way to try to surround myself with people who make me. And if I'm the smartest person in the room, I'm in the wrong room, kind of thing. And it's that I love the way you put that. Who's reminding you right now that you're winning? That's really powerful. Harriet, this has been.
Go ahead.
No, please.
The question you just said then about, or the comment you just mentioned then about being the smartest, not being the smartest person in the room, and I wholeheartedly agree. How do you find, this question for you, how do you find getting out into those other rooms where you aren't the smartest person, if you find yourself the smartest person in your existing rooms?
Oh, wow. Flipping this around on me. I think my curiosity makes that not an intentional decision. If you know what I mean. Like I don't, it's okay, if I'm the smartest person in the room, I'm in the wrong room. I think there's always something that someone can teach me. And so I'm always in that position where I feel like I have something else. And then my curiosity, not only does that help me see things differently in whatever room I'm in, but so that's a perspective shift. But I think, seek things out that always push my boundaries. Right. So when I'm playing golf, I want to play golf with people who are better than me. And now I want to see what they're doing. Right. And when I'm at a sales conference, I'm going to try to find people who are, next to me, or I recognize some people, or you get engaged in some really interesting conversations, and, I want to learn more. And there's always a way to find someone who has some expertise in a place that I don't. I always got along really well with my teachers in high school and in college, because at least for the subjects I cared to learn about, because like, that curiosity to me means a constant expansion of my own horizons and boundaries. And I think I've always just intuitively been curious. I've never been asked that before. I like that question.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I like the curiosity piece. It's that's how I teach qualification, is being really curious. The person, the business, the department, their goals. And when you get curious, you have a really interesting conversation, regardless of whether you're selling or not. But I think that's really interesting way to put it, because I would not have said curiosity. I would have said, I'm going to find somebody, that I believe has done more or believe is better. And I always find as well, like I always look at people, there's a guy around the corner, I haven't met him yet, but a guy around the corner in his garage, he has a Lamborghini and a Ferrari and a BMW M3 thing next to each other.
Sure.
And I'm like, what does he do?
Right.
And every time, so I was like, when I walk past there and he's there, because they recently moved in, I was like, I'm going to ask him what he does. Like, that's because I am genuinely interested. Like, you are successful. Right. Maybe, how do you, either that or big loans, how have you achieved this? What do you do? I'm genuinely interested. And that just kind of came to me when you said, get curious, and I guess really that's like the weirdo in the shopping center answering people's problems, but I think curious is a good answer. I like it.
Well, I think you can't be curious unless you're willing to be wrong, and once you're willing to be wrong, you're willing to admit that someone knows something that you don't. So not being the smartest person in the room isn't as hard as it thinks, or isn't as hard as it sounds, because if you're open to the potential that someone can teach you something, and I just believe that every human being can teach us something. My kids, when they were newborns, taught me things, right? Through nonverbal communication. They couldn't even talk yet, but you see their disposition when things change. You see their ability. It's really not even an ability. It's just their innate nature to be in the moment, to be present. Like, just there's so many things that you can learn if you're willing to admit that you don't have it all figured out yourself. That's what curiosity is to me. And maybe you're going to see that guy out there, and you're going to find that it's just Jordan Belfort's summer home or winter home, in Australia, because he always likes it to be summer or something like that, and that's why he's got the 3 vehicles that way.
Yeah, could be. Exactly. Yeah. I'll keep you posted.
Please let me know. Take a selfie, send it to me.
I will.
Harriet, this has been lovely. I'm so enamored with your work and what you're doing, and your energy and your vibe, like from halfway across the world, is coming through on this podcast. So thanks for staying up a little late with me and sharing everything that you have now with everybody listening. How can people learn more about you, what you do, your programs, et cetera? Where should they go?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Well, thank you for having me. I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. You mentioned at the beginning, I've got a podcast called Sell Like You. That's probably the best place to find me, to learn more about the techniques and I guess really the tips and experiences that I share, and the guests and some great opportunities on there just to find out about new people and get curious in your own way. Otherwise, you can find me over on LinkedIn. Just search Harriet.
What did I tell you? Look, I told you that she's got this effortless way of just confidently going about how she does what she does. And that is apparent. And I've got to tell you, I know that feeling translates to more clients. That feeling translates to more customers for her, always has. And she talked a little bit about curiosity. She talked a little bit about what it means to fail, what it means to succeed. And, in the next episode, I'm going to go a little bit deeper into what the definition of success and failure should be, I think, for you, because I think most people have bad perspective on that. So I want to take that nugget from this conversation and move forward with it in the next episode. But I just want you to sit for a second and think about not just what Harriet had to say, but how she said it and how that can hopefully rub off on you. The best way to find Harriet is through her podcast. So you're probably listening to this in a podcast player right now. Sell Like You. Go search for it. You will find her. You can also find her on LinkedIn. Those links are in the show notes. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your time with us. And I'm looking forward to going a little bit deeper into the concepts of success and failure on the next episode. I'll talk to you then.
Rethink the Way You Sell is a Pod About It production. It's mixed and edited by Doug Branson, with music by Blue Dot Sessions and Doug Branson. This podcast is masterminded by Jeff Bajorek.